Hello everyone. This is the start of a new series on Gum, the Gum tool. This will be the first part, the overview and installation. It's a tool that is made by FlatRedBall creator Vic, and we're going to go into details on how to download, install, and a brief overview of the application. So the first thing is if you go to docs.flatredball.com/gum, or you can just go to FlatRedBall itself, and you can see information here that will take you to the docs, and then you can go to gum, and then you can go to the actual documentation. So why do we want to use this? Well, as you can see from this example, we've got a main menu interface: play, instruction, setting, pack data, ship creator, sector creator. So these buttons, these graphical user interface components can all be created, laid out, and defined inside of this gum.exe tool. Here's another example showing quests. So here's a bunch of quests that might be showing up. And so you can see that any user interface, any overlay, anything you display that might have menus and buttons and text, things like that, you can do it in gum.exe, and then you can export that in the multiple different ways to your project. This documentation has information on how to set it up, some examples and tutorials, and also how to integrate it with other tools like Monogame. So if you come in here in the past for Monogame tutorials, this still relates to you. Let's talk about the 5 W's of Gum. What is Gum? Well, it's a GUI creation toolkit. So you can create a graphical user interface, and that user interface can be created via what you see as what you get. You can click around, you can drag, you can configure information in the editor, and you can relate different components of the UI to other components, so you have a hierarchy of parents and children, and this can make it a lot easier to use. Who is Gum? Gum was created by Vic. He's also the creator of FlatRedBall. This is recommended now by the maintainer of monogame.extended, and this is a article talking about that. When is Gum? I just put this in here to be funny. There's 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, how, why. Where is Gum? We already went over that. You can go to that link to either download it, and then why Gum. So again, it's a GUI creation toolkit and a library. So it's actually a two-part item. The editor doesn't have to be used. You can write all of your code and just use the library. But the GUI editor is extremely powerful, and you might as well use it since it's written. If you create a GUI, a user interface, in Gum, you can export the code and then import either that code, or you can import the actual project that's created by the executable. So documentation we talked about. Um, you're going to need to download Gum. It's prepackaged for you. So if we go to the website here, we can see that under setup, it shows here's where you can download Gum. If you don't want to download a pre-built binary, you can check out the source code. You can open it in Visual Studio and you can build it yourself. This will be the most current way to get any updates that are not yet released. It also requires the XNA framework. Vic is in the process of updating Gum so that it will use monogame instead of XNA framework. But until that point, you will need to download the Microsoft XNA framework redistributable and install that in your computer. So I'm going to download this, and then we'll go here and get this also. Download. After downloading it, right-click or shift-right-click and go to Properties. In here, you're going to want to unblock the file. If you don't, you'll have odd behavior. And now that it's unblocked, you're going to want to extract it. So right-click and extract all. When it's done, it will open up the Gum unzipped folder. Inside there is where gum.exe is, but you can't open it yet. You need to run the XNA redistributable to install this. This is that Microsoft toolkit. Accept the terms, next, install. Let me create a new project so that we're not using one of my older projects. Okay, so now that we've got this installed, the next piece is going to be talking about the overview of the application itself. And so I'm going to put this on my other screen, and I'm going to go over these tips with you and the interface. On the left-hand side under the project, we've got behaviors. There's the standard set of components or objects. There's the components. This is so that you can make your own custom combination of other standard components. And then there's screens. And you can think about these like game screens. At the top, of course, we've got the standard file menu. If we select one of these objects, we can see the variables that belong to that standard component. And in the bottom right, we have code generation. We pull this up. So this is the code that you could copy and paste into your project as long as you include the gum NuGet package. Then you should be able to take this code, run it in your project, and you'll be able to have a circle on the screen, in this case, because we're clicking on a circle. So let me go over some of the standard parts of this interface here, some kind of tips and tricks. So if you want to move around the window on the right, you can use these scroll bars, but you can also middle click and hold, and then you can move the interface around that way, similar to some other tools where you can middle click and drag. If you drag an object on here, so let me just create a screen, add screen, main menu screen. I'm going to add in let's just add in a colored rectangle to that. Here it is. And if I pull it away, you can see that there is this white line that goes from the top corner to this top corner. The top corner to corner is because of the settings that are here, but the important part is this white line. This white line here essentially means that this is the child and the object that it's pointing at is the parent. It has standard things like if I wanted to delete this, I can Control Z to undo. I can copy this and paste it. So all of the standard shortcuts like Control C to copy, Control V to paste, Control Z to undo. On the left, or on the variable section here, you'll see that there are, if I click on circle, colored rectangle instance, you'll see that these are all green right here. And the reason why these are green in the background is because this data is being inherited from the parent, the default. So this is essentially the default value of 50. But if we change this to say 30, now this is turning white to indicate that this is a unique value for this instance of a rectangle. So the colored rectangle has 50, whereas our instance of it has 30, and we can tell that it no longer relies on the default value because it doesn't have that green. If you wanted to move something around in the editor and you want it to kind of align to one axis, you can hold shift while you're dragging it and it kind of stays with whatever axis you're moving along. So you can kind of see how it's jumping between axes there. The next tip here is, let's say I add a bunch of colored rectangles to the main menu and maybe the order matters for some reason. I don't know why they wouldn't matter. Let me change some of the colors. So let's change the first one here to all red. So I'm going to get rid of this, get rid of this. I'll change this one to all blue. So get rid of this, get rid of this. And I'll leave that one as white. So now that we've got these three rectangles, if we want to change the order that these are in, you can hold the Alt key and you can press up and down arrows to move that object within the hierarchy so that it's either first or last. As an example, we'll put this over it, and we can see that if I move it up and down with Alt up and down, it's changing which one's on top of the other one, which one's drawn first, which one's drawn second. You can also filter your project objects to find one by name up here. So if I wanted to find the color instance 2, so colored, you can type in data here to filter. Now let's say that you've changed the values. So I've changed the value on this one where I've changed it to 30. But I want this to go back to the default value. If you right click it, you can say make default, and now it will go back to the default value, and you'll see that because it's green and also because it changed size. It also isn't initially obvious, but let's say you don't want to drag it up here. You can actually move the position by clicking over here in the label for X, for Y, for width, for height, and also you can rotate this to change the rotation. So you don't have to specify values if you don't want to. You can use the sliders that are built into these labels to move it around instead if for some reason you want that fine grain precision where you're trying to get it to look right, but you don't want to have to move it in 2 or 3 axes. And the last little piece of information is just kind of some information about where some of the data is stored. And if you go to, I wasn't trying to do that. If you go to %appdata%/gum, this is where your settings are stored for this project. So if we open this, we can see some of the settings that are being stored for this. Thanks for watching. If you have other ideas or other series you'd like to see, please put them in the comments down below, and I'll talk to you next time.